Our guest is Miguel Wise, Mike Wise. He's a former state representative, was also mayor until recently when he resigned to run for the Democratic nomination for the 92nd District Court in Hidalgo County, one of three people fighting out in the Democratic primary, and then the eventual winner meets a Republican. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much, Davis and Kennedy, for having me.
So is this a shrewd move, or did you lose your mind? Which is?
I hope it's a shrewd move. Certainly, the time and service I had in the legislature and as the mayor of Weslaco were quite enjoyable and quite a learning experience. But it's a dream I've always had to be a judge, and I've served in the executive and the legislative branch, and now I want to see what it's like in the judicial branch.
My sister was a district judge in Dallas till she got pitched out in the revolution up there a few years ago. And as my youngest son said, Aunt Susan can put people in jail. Is that why you want to be a judge, so you can confine people in jail?
Not at all. Not at all, Davis. I certainly want to make sure that the courts are open to everybody, and those that seek justice will get their fair shake in the courthouse.
What made you go this direction as opposed to a different position?
Well, I've always wanted to be a judge, and I think most lawyers want to be judges. I think that's kind of the pinnacle of the legal career, I think. And it was an easy choice for me. It was fortuitous that the courts, that there was an open seat.
It opened up, yeah. It's hard to beat an incumbent district judge.
I think statistically, incumbents have a 98, 99% chance of getting reelected. At least they do in the legislature.
So when people, how would you recommend people decide who to vote for, which is not an invitation just to stress your strengths, but I contend unless you go to the courthouse, how do you know? How do you know which is the one?
Well, the 92nd is a court of general jurisdiction, so it deals with civil, it deals with criminal law, family law, and tax, and I've been doing that for 29 years. This year is going to be my 30th anniversary as an attorney, and certainly I think I've got the background. As you know, Davis, I've pretty much been a defense lawyer for most of my career, representing businesses and doctors and hospitals. But I certainly get involved in not only in representing Fortune 500 companies, but also representing individuals in the criminal field that, despite the fact that, some folks feel that if you get indicted that you're guilty, the fact of the matter is the Constitution gives us a right to due process. And certainly, the universal belief that, unfortunately, some countries don't have it, but we do, and that is that you're innocent until proven guilty.
As opposed to countries who have the old Napoleonic code, you're guilty until you can prove yourself innocent.
Yeah, so that's correct, and the burden should be on the state.
So explain Amanda Knox. Explain that deal.
Right?
No, don't talk about it. No, if you read,
you have another 2 hours.
No.
Well, I read this. I read this book, The Monster of Florence, and I came away thinking, my God, I would not want to be sucked up into that system. It just was a horror.
Well, certainly being tried in absentia doesn't seem like a fair concept.
This is going to be a big task, though. The 92nd District Court. That's a big task. Are you up to that? Because you seem too jolly. And
well, he hasn't been on the bench for a while.
I think anybody that knows me realizes that I have a very friendly disposition, and I like people.
Away, right?
I like people. No, it won't go away, Davis.
Sit down, clown. Are there any issues? For example, there used to be, and I don't know if there still is, talk about moving dockets, that some judges did not move cases enough, so they backed up. People couldn't get justice, couldn't get in front of a judge, number one. Number two, as long as I have been an adult, there's been a complaint about people sitting in the county jail too long. They can't get bond to get out, even though they're not going to run off, and they sit there and the county's got to feed them. So are either of those something you're interested in?
Well, certainly having defendants in jail is part of the executive process. It's part of that branch. It has to do with the sheriff's office, and it has to do with the district attorney's office. But certainly, from what I've been able to tell, I think the docket moves.
Dockets are moving okay?
Fast enough.
There was a time when some of these guys had dockets went back years.
Sure. And really the ones that really take the brunt of being in jail a long time are undocumented workers.
Yeah.
They can't afford a lawyer, so they get one appointed for them. and
Or poor people who get caught up in felonies, rightly or wrongly, they can't make bond even though they're not going to abscond.
right. Certainly with the misdemeanor, the complaint is filed by the DA's office fairly quickly, but for felonies, you have to have a grand jury that meets and the evidence presented. And you can only work, the grand jurors so hard. They meet weekly for 3, 4, 5, 6 months.
Is that something that a judge can do, or does that really require? I'm thinking that has to be. You have to have the DA and the sheriff on board, or it won't work.
No, that's very true. It really has to. It's an orchestra, it's a symphony, and you need to have everybody on the same sheet of music. Otherwise, it crashes.
This is the position Ricardo Rodriguez, who we just
Yes.
interviewed, is resigned. He's running for DA. Is there something that you want to do a little different than he was done, or just continue his legacy?
Well, I think one of the things that I'd really like to push for is I believe that the emphasis on the mentally ill is not there. I think it should be. I think we're locking up a lot of folks that really should be getting mental health treatment, and they're not. And we're crowding our jails, and it's unfair to that individual, and certainly unfair to the system, and it's certainly unfair to the taxpayers. We need these individuals treated and released, and
Is there a? Do you have many clients as a defense? I assume that did you do courthouse? I'm cramming 3 questions into one. Did you do courthouse appointments, or whether you did them or not, get appointed a case that you had to take?
Well,
and they were out of their mind or had severe emotional problems?
Both in federal court and state
Okay.
court. Yes, that's correct. And you file a motion for competency, and the state sends them to a certain psychiatrist. I've never had a psychiatrist declare them incompetent. Excuse me.
Okay.
And I've had to file a second motion to go with a second psychiatrist, and they're found incompetent. I had one individual who said since he was 6 years old, he was a confidential informant for FAR PD.
Well, who would have suspected?
Right,
A perfect
right.
informant.
And
You questioned that? That's a genius, Mike.
he said he had his medical degree from Harvard and had specialized in psychiatry at Yale.
Well, Doogie Howser had a lot of those credentials as well.
It was very evident that this young man hadn't, but he was found competent.
You're joking.
No, I am not.
This is the state psychiatrist?
That's correct. So
the state of Texas is, or the federal?
it would be the county.
The counties.
The county, whoever. Well, it's the state of Texas, but they're paid by the county.
I don't have a clever response to that. That's remarkable.
I don't either. You read the report and your jaw drops. You're kidding me. It's sad.
Is there any appetite to fix that, or if you get elected, you're going to be the Lone Ranger?
No, I think I don't think that's a Lone Ranger type issue. I think it's just an issue that the courts need to get behind, and I certainly want to lead the charge in that. That would certainly be one issue.
I've been hearing for a while that when the cops pick up kids in particular who are drunk or have I'm not talking about they feel depressed or they feel like they're not good enough, severe mental problems, and there's really no place to put them. But it always struck me this is a really expensive problem to handle.
And yeah, I agree with you, Davis. Judge Contreras, a juvenile court judge, God bless him. He has a horrible docket. I mean, he's dealing with these kids that, and a lot of them have mental health issues. They're bipolar. They're addicted to synthetic marijuana, and they have to be dried out for a couple of months and put on the right medication, and so it's a real juggling act for him, because but from my experience, a lot of them have mental health issues, and that's why they're acting the way they are. They're either aggressive because they have. It's just not an individual who has anger issues, or born out of a poor family or parents missing. These are folks who these are young men and women who
they live in an alternate universe.
They do. It's sad.
Well, our universe says that early voting starts mid-February.
The 18th.
And the day of is March the 4th. And when you go to vote in Hidalgo County, and you don't have to be a resident, don't even have to live in that precinct, you just show up. No, I'm kidding, of course. You show up to vote, and the 92nd District Court ballot will have the name Miguel Mike Wise, as in WISE.
That's correct.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you,
and,
Davis.
thank you for
Kennedy.
being here.
Yes,
Appreciate
sir.
it.
The dynamic power duo. Thank you.
Don't give away the secret away. You're listening to The Drive Home on 710 KRV.